600 offices and laboratories worldwide, SGS is the world's leading inspection, verification, testing and certification company. We develop innovative solutions and services across all industry to drive our customers' continued success locally and globally. For the consumer goods and retail industry, we offer turnkey and tailor-made solutions to help brands and retailers improve the safety, efficacy, and quality of products throughout the entire supply product life cycle. We offer regulatory and performance testing for all consumer products, from your morning coffee cup to the bed you sleep on at night. In the end, it is only trusted because it is tested. At SGS, we have more than 125 laboratories and 16,000 employees working within the consumer goods and retail industry to ensure safe and compliant products are placed on the market. Now that you have an understanding of who we are, I will pass it on to Paul. Paul, you now have the floor. You can start your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy. Mary, sorry, not Wendy, get the names right. Thank you everybody who's taken the time to spend with me this afternoon, where we will talk about total quality solutions of footwear products. Many of you, or some of you, may well have been on my webinars before. I've done sole bonding, Chrome 6 and warehouse risk management. And before I go ahead with the footwear side of this presentation that I'm making today, I just wanted to remind some of you about the risk caused by our recent pandemic that we've had globally, and that is warehouse risk management. Just to remind you all to please take care in your factories, in your supply chain, in regards to mold. You know, we can't blame the factories, we can't blame anybody for the situation that we're in right now, but products are being made under unusual conditions, may be stored in unfavorable conditions, so please just make sure you're checking your product to avoid the high risk of contaminating your products and costing your business more money. That was just a quick and a short reminder from something that I talked about last year and wanted to remind you about today. So the main part of our presentation this afternoon is what we call our FOOTS services. Now, I'm shamelessly actually plugging some services here that SGS offer, but of course these are operations that you should have set up in your organizations, the way that you're working today in terms of making sure you've got factory technical assessments, you've got your pre-production ready, and your online or on-site inspections. I call this whole process the 5 pillars of quality assurance. 2 of them are all very common, the DuPro and the final random inspection, FRI, where we use our AQL inspection reports. But there are 3 other very crucial areas, which are the 3 points that I really want to discuss with you and show you today. So looking at first slide here, these are the FOOTS programs that we're looking at. So starting at the bottom left-hand corner, we've got technical factory assessments, and I will discuss this and show you what we do and just remind you what you should be doing in preparation for your production orders. Production readiness check, where we start to look at the sealed samples that have been delivered by the brand or the retailer directly to the manufacturer, and which basically demonstrates this is how our shoe should look at the end. This is it. And then the on-site production controls, which is looking at how we can mitigate problems in production to stop any bottlenecks prior to production to ensure we get a smooth production run. So moving on to the next slide, where I just explained these 3 pillars again. So before you place an order, you should be considering your TFA, your technical factory assessment, assess the factory's capabilities and capacities. Before mass production, this is pre-readiness check. You need to make sure your product is ready, the materials are right, the standards are correct, the testing has been done to avoid any delays. And I mentioned testing there because all too often I see production start, the factory starts to test materials, you have a chemical or a physical failure in the material, yet you've already produced 10,000 pairs of shoes. So it's a question of making the priorities and doing things at the right time. At the begin, and then there's at the beginning of mass production is the OPC, which is an on-site production control, and I'll explain to you what 5M and 1E means when I get to that slide in a moment. So the SGS Footwear Operational Optimization Technical Service, a little bit of a tongue twister, but the words fitted into the name FOOTS, which of course is very relevant in terms of the footwear business that we're in. So we'll look at the starting point, which is where you place your production orders, the process where we start to make the shoe and make sure we've got all the right materials in place, and the end point, that being right into production part of the process. But of course, whenever we're talking about this, we still have to mention UPRO and FRI, so the other two key pillars that are so important during the manufacturing process. And we'll go through, as I say, TFA, PRC, and OPC. But also, whenever considering any of the production processes, we also must think about sustainability and the environmental services, such as chemical management, ZDHC services, MRSL solutions, mold prevention, which I mentioned at the very beginning of our presentation here, Chrome 6 solutions, tannery solutions, footwear and leather defect analysis. These are all services that we can offer, but all areas that you need to take into deep consideration when you start to place orders and who you start to place those with. So Footwear Optimization or Technical Services, FOOTS. As we just explained, we've got the FOOTS program, TFA, which is the inputs, PRC, which is the start of the activities, and activities carrying on with OPC. And just reminding you again of the services that we need to offer in addition to the standard inspection services. So what is a factory technical assessment? A factory technical assessment is a full view of the area of the factory. I'm looking at the workforce, the management, the processes they have in place, the health and safety checkpoints that they have. We look at 9 different service categories, and there are over 150 different checkpoints throughout the entire factory. And the way the standard we have set up here is to benchmark each factory against the best in the world. This will give you a reading in terms of a traffic light system, red, amber, and green, in terms of their viability and the way that they run their factories. And this can help you to make a decision. Is this a partner factory that I need to work with? And you also have to understand, when we talk about the assessment itself, is if I'm choosing this fit factory because my purchasing manager has decided they're offering a very, very good price, they can give me good TAT, but are they actually in place to manufacture the right kind of shoe? You may be placing an order for, let's say, an outdoor footwear, hiking boot. But if the factory have never made that kind of product before, it's very unlikely they're going to have the equipment or the skill or the ability to make that shoe. This assessment takes into consideration not just the capability and the capacity, but also the type of construction of shoe that they can make. So we'll have a look at what it really, really looks at, and this is the TFA. So we look at the general production management, the factory facilities and the environmental management. And remember, we're getting this information, we're building this process on what we know the industry, the retailers and the brands are really looking for. We look at the supply chain management, incoming materials quality control. Some people may ask me, why do we have to look at that? You know, we've told them what to order, the factory, they've got the full bill of materials, they'll order that material, they'll make our shoe. But to give you a couple of examples, quite often a brand or a retailer may use more than one facility to manufacture their shoe, but the sealed sample is the same. Each shoe must be exactly the same. The manufacturer must order the materials according to the bill of materials from the branded products or from the suppliers that have offered to supply the materials. Sometimes, and cynically, I know I say this, but we all know, if with hand on heart, that this happens. You can place your order with a factory. They decide they need to make a little bit extra margin on their product. So you've asked for a black leather from XYZ tannery, but they can buy a similar looking leather from a tannery further down the road, a little bit cheaper, so they decide to buy that. But if you've got the second factory that follows your bill of materials precisely, when you get the two production batches together, then you've got a problem because they don't look the same. Okay, so it is important to ensure the supply chain management and the incoming materials controls is there. We'll also look at metal contamination and sharp tools control program, which I'll take you through shortly. Chemical management, it's more and more relevant today. It's not just a question of the brand or the retailer understanding chemical management. The shoe factory needs to understand it. They need to know that the materials they're buying may or may not contain restricted substances and why they are there. They need to have the conversation with the material suppliers. All too often, I come across issues, and I mentioned it a moment ago, where production of footwear goes in and the factory decide they've got to follow the protocol from the retailer or the brand to meet certain restricted substance standards. They test while they're in production and they get to failure. Now, I defend shoe factories because I'm a shoemaker and I've been making shoes and leather for 40 years. But my opinion is the materials manufacturers should be responsible for the chemical management in their product. The shoe manufacturer has added nothing to the shoe to make it pass or fail a restricted substance process. So therefore, chemical management is important that not only the brand and retailer understand it, but the manufacturers of the materials and the manufacturers of the shoes have a deep understanding. We look at the mold prevention programs to make sure that the factories are secure and have processes in place, product quality control programs, factory quality assurance and quality control programs, and on-spot inspection and evaluation. So that's basically the process of a TFA, is to evaluate the factory's capability, its capacity, before placing an purchase order, they're making the business decisions. It supports you to make those business decisions. So what does it look at? The specific production quality control. Now remember, I told you there's 150 plus checkpoints throughout the entire process. But if we were specifically looking at just a cemented shoe or a vulcanized, injection molded or EVA shoe, there are 53 checkpoints, 60 checkpoints, 51 checkpoints, 60 checkpoints. Now, I made this presentation a few hours ago to our colleagues in Asia, and one question came up and said, well, what about if it's a Goodyear welted shoe? A Goodyear welted shoe will have far more checkpoints, purely because of the way it's manufactured. And if any of you are not quite sure how or what a Goodyear welted shoe is, you should look on YouTube and you can find videos. One is from a factory not 20 minutes away from where I'm sitting right now, called Barker's Shoe Factory in the UK, where they show you the entire process of how a Goodyear welted shoe is made, and I recommend you watch it. But there's other points we look at, and of course we look at the general information, which could be many different points. We look at the raw material and production room. We look at the raw material warehouse, and this is where we start to look at all the processes of how the material is cut, how it is prepared, how it is stored, making sure there is mold controls. And of course, if it's an injection room, we don't look at that for cemented shoes or vulcanized shoes because they're not injected. We look at the cutting room, stitching room, stock fitting room, which is your bottom stock, which is your insoles and outsole materials, the assembly or the lasting room, as it's affectionately called, and of course the finished products and the warehouse of the product. And this is just a quick overview of what we can offer. Now, I'll just reiterate what I said at the beginning. I am shamelessly promoting something that SGS have the ability to run and support with you. But of course, these are also good checkpoints for yourselves, should you be running these programs yourself to ensure excellent quality. So when we look at specific programs, and just to give you, again, a very quick overview in terms of what we're looking at, if it's a vulcanized shoe, we look at the material mixing management, hot press procedures, fastness of small parts, pot life of adhesive. Now, you'll see pot life of adhesive in a majority of these that I'm sharing with you. And why do we so much emphasize on that? Well, I can tell you today, the top 3 issues in the footwear industry, if you're making leather shoes, it's Chrome 6, it's mold, and that's why I always mention mold, because I hear about mold problems every day. And the third problem is more of a technical issue, which is sole bonding. And I will touch on this in a short while. And I did run webinars last year on sole bonding, and I'm happy to do it again should anybody request it. So pot life of adhesive and primer is relevant to sole bonding, and you'll see that across these. But in EVA shoes, we again look at the material mix and management, the calendaring of sheet materials. So we're also looking, if you're a vertical operation shoe factory manufacturing your own EVA, or we can also inspect the manufacturer of the material to make sure the process is correct. And when you're talking of any material that is PU based, you have to also consider other chemicals that are being used. And one of the big issues in Europe are the phthalates, and phthalates are used in these materials for softening or hardening of the material. So it needs to be regularly checked. Even if you've done pre-checks before you go into production, check with the supplier of the material that they have not changed the formula to the material that they use, because a simple change, because they've got a cost saving by changing, can cost you time and money and extra testing costs. So there are so many checkpoints to go through. The most common type of shoe, of course, cemented shoe, pot life adhesive, cutting layers, and I'll go through these and show you some case studies of what we mean by this in a short while. And then, of course, injection molded shoes. These are the most common types of footwear production that we see today. So just sharing you, each type of shoe can have a different capability, a different capacity in the shoe factory. So we need to understand. And people talk to us about the capacity and why do we check the capacity? Well, again, a case study. If you have placed an order for 20,000 pairs of shoes, as an example, and the shoe factory accept it, but they understand the delivery is 2 weeks, but actually it's going to take them 4 weeks to manufacture 20,000 pairs. So they subcontract to another factory 10,000 pairs of the shoe. They supply all the materials, they just say, you make them for us. But that in itself offers risk, because if it's subcontracted, and I know many retailers, brands will not allow this, but do you know if it happens? Yes or no? Because if you have a problem and you've gone to a factory that's not had an audit, it has not had a social and ethical audit, and is not meeting your standards in terms of production facility, you may be leaving yourself at risk. So that's why we have to really take care of the capacity and make sure the shoes are not being subcontracted out. But on our technical factory assessment, one of the things that I'm quite proud of with SGS and our footwear division is we're very transparent. You know, if there are problems, we share the problems, we highlight the problems, we discuss the problems, and we offer a solution. So always when we start, and let me tell you, a TFA, a technical factory assessment, this for me is the factory's responsibility to run. Because should they be successful, or when they are successful, we get a green award, which says they are benchmarked against the best in the world in terms of manufacturing and quality control and everything else, then it's a unique selling point for them to be able to sell their facility and sell their production process. So we always open up with the meeting with the factory management, including supervisors and line managers. We have complete transparency. We look at the documented information, the data that's been captured by ourselves during an on-site tour, and we also do a random inspection of product to make sure that what is in the factory now is actually being made in the correct way. We look at the factory regulations for the region. We look at the client's requirements, which is the brand or retailer. They insist on certain requirements within the factory on number of hours worked, etc. We review that, and we look at that through their operation records. We look at the plant layout and the facility to make sure it's safe and healthy for the employees as well as visitors to the factory, because health and safety as well as environment is extremely important. On every production process, we look at the work coming in, and we look at the personnel interviews. We actually interview members of their staff just to see their own opinions of how the factory is working. On-site inspection, of course. Anything we've collected in evidence, we then disclose in the meeting. And as I said, we are so transparent. We don't just walk in and say to the factory, you're red, you've got a lot of things to fix, and we walk away and we come back in 6 months' time. We actually write for them their corrective action plan, and we work with them on the corrective action plan to improve their facilities. We're not trying to be arrogant, we're just measuring the factory against the best in the business to make sure the whole industry comes up to a standard. And at the beginning, Mary, she suggested that I have a passion for the industry, and I really do. I want every factory to be manufacturing in the same way. I don't want to be cynical about the factory and the way they source their materials. I want to work with the best in the world. And you, as brands and retailers and the factories, you want to be the best in the world and work with the best in the world. So let's make our industry a safer and stronger place. So when we've run the first technical assessment, if you look at this graph, you can see the blue blocks, and around them there's orange squares. Orange squares is where the best in the world will be. The blue square is where, on this one, and this is a made-up one, the blue square is where this factory, after we'd run the initial assessment, is where they were. So we're not saying it's bad, we're not saying it's good, we're saying there's a lot of room for improvement. And like any business, like even ourselves and personally, we can always improve ourselves, and it's continuous improvement. But what this does is suggest to the factory in a very simple way, this is where you are today. And the orange line is where you need to be or where you can be. But it tells you in each area. You look from the left-hand side, general production management, they got 7% out of 8, so they're pretty close. But factory facilities and the environment management got full 6%, so it's done pretty well. But look at the one with the tall one, where it says production quality control program. They got 22%, where they need to be 40% of the total measurement. So they're falling short almost by half in the production quality. So there would be a corrective action plan to really improve that, because you improve that, you're going to go from a red to a green in a matter of weeks, just by fixing your quality control program. And like I said, we will have written for them a corrective action plan to make sure that happens. It's of course up to the factory whether they execute that corrective action plan, but it's the best way forward for them. And as I mentioned, it works out in a red, amber and green, a traffic light system. Now, if it's red, they've scored below a total score of 60%, which is, there's an awful lot of corrections to do. And if I'm very, very honest and transparent, as I say I am, if it's a red score, I would be very careful to place orders at the factory with this, because they're failing in many areas. Now, once we run the assessment, if it's a red, we will give them the corrective action plan and 3 to 6 months to make that plan, and we can then come back, which you can see we run the same there in the amber. But amber is saying, you know what, they're above 60%, below 80%. They're almost there. 3 to 6 months' time, we think they will be there. You could place your orders there, but keep a very close eye on them, okay, to ensure good and safe practice. If they are green, there are no critical issues. They're over 80%. We should do a renew assessment within 2 years just to make sure they've continued their standards. Okay, so you can see how I mean when I say this kind of TFA is a unique selling point for the factory. If they are green, they can present this to any potential buyers, who can then verify with SGS whether we agree that that is a reported valid, and you're safe to go and place your production there, because you'll have all the notes within the report will tell you exactly how many pairs of shoes they can make per day and the capability, the type of shoes that they can make also. So I mentioned a few moments ago, excuse me, I just need a drink of water. I mentioned a few moments ago how important it is to get your sole bonding right. So as a case study, and just to show you some of the things that we work on, if you look at the picture on the bottom left-hand corner, that's a glue pot. That's an adhesive pot, okay? But there's a problem, and you can see the answer on the right, okay? On this glue pot, there is no label to say when the adhesive had been issued from the warehouse or from the adhesive plant directly to the factory. Now, some of you may ask, why is that the case? Well, once you've mixed polyurethane adhesive, whether it's water-based or whether it's the solvent-based adhesive, you add into it anything between 3 and 5% of a hardener, an isocyanate, which helps the hardeners in the adhesive to activate and cross-link once they're heated and the outsole and the sole placed together. That's very simply how it works. But once the hardener has been added to the adhesive has a shelf life or a life of 2 hours, no more. If you go beyond the 2-hour period, then you're in danger then of sole bond problem, but you won't get the bonding of the adhesive, won't cross. That's what happens in a very basic way. So we suggest, and this is what we suggest, that they put a sticky label on the side, which is signed by the guy in the warehouse who distributed the adhesive with the time that it was distributed, and again, at the time that it will be elapsed. And then the supervisor would remove it from the line and bring fresh. Now, you can do it by a simple system like this, but another way that I've seen, which I saw actually in Cambodia, and I thought it was very, very interesting, and instead of putting a time, they color-coded it. They said if the ink pot is green, that is 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. If it is blue, it is 10 o'clock to 12. If it is pink, it is 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And not only was the glue pot, the brushes and the implements they were using for applying the adhesive were the same. So it's put very good corrective actions in place, and now we know we have a system in place in the back. That's a way that we look at corrective action, okay? Something else I mentioned a few moments ago is we looked at the cutting, and I'm just giving you here another case study. You can look at the picture on the left-hand side. You can see here that there's multiple layers, 10, 12, 14, 20 layers of material. You will have a problem if you cut this type of material this high, unless you vacuum stuck it down and cut like from a vacuum saw. Because, and in very simple ways, when you cut multiple layers, like over maybe 15 or 20 layers, when the cutting die goes in, the top one and the bottom one will be the same. Because you compress the material, it compresses concave. So your middle pieces could be anything between 1 and 2 millimeters smaller than the ones on the top, which then means you have a fit problem, okay? So that could be a bottleneck. So we looked at this, we proved to the manufacturer that they were causing themselves problems, fixed the problem. You don't get the stain if you use 5 or 6 layers, and it should be checked and monitored, okay? So yeah, so it's from 6 layers to a lot more layers. And we can prove this happens. And if you've got fit problems in your factory and you've got multiple cutting, that's one of the areas you really should look at. So then we move on to the PRC. So we've done our factory technical assessment. We know the factory have got good environmental practices, mold control. They've got good security in terms of quality assurance and good processes in place. Capacity. Now the brand or retailer has issued their sealed samples, gold, black, whatever they are, sealed samples, and this is the shoe they're buying. They issue the bill of materials of that shoe, and all the measurements for the fittings and the size range and everything is all issued in their tech pack. That must be followed. So before going into production, you need a or production ready. What is So that's the second part and the second pillar within our process, and it's called the PRC. It's production readiness check. This is the technical readiness of. And this is important because if you start incorrectly, you're going to finish correctly. If you start with the wrong materials, it will finish with the wrong material. If you don't have a good, steady process to manufacture the product, you're going to have bottlenecks. And if you have bottlenecks, that delays production. The last thing any retailer, brand, or buyer want is to have any issues in terms of product being shipped on time. In fact, they probably want it. Give yourselves an example. If the shoe has been selling exceptionally well, the buyer says, you know what, we need another 10 100,000. Selling well, it's a great opportunity for us. We need to place an order. You need to make sure you could make that short order very, very quickly. So what does the PRC do? We look at the product development, the pre-production testing and incoming materials. And remember, a few moments ago I said today, make sure the materials meet the standards you require before you start production, or else you end up with a large loss of product because you've gone into production and the materials are not suitable or they don't meet the local requirements in terms of restricted substances. Make sure the samples are exact match commercialization. Production details review. So look at the entire production line. Different shoes could have different production processes or different production lines. Look at the risk assessment. Where are the problems for this shoe? And fix them before you go to mass production. Field inspection, excuse me, and functional testing, just the same as I mentioned with the incoming materials, and the size measure. Make sure that as you have requested, because sometimes last date can change, or the last have not been graded correctly, then you're going to have a fit problem. So all things need to be measured and considered. So when you're getting ready for the production readiness check, you need verification of the readiness. You need to know that you're ready to go to production. Any potential bottlenecks have been cured or surfaced, that you've got the right materials coming into the warehouse. And it's quite simple to look at the bill of materials that's been issued by the brand or the retailer, which will tell you what the material is, the substance is, the exact color code, and where the product is ordered from. So at this stage, you can actually go back to the purchasing department. You can check their purchase orders to make sure the material has been ordered from the correct place. When the delivery notes come in, you can check again the correct material. Make sure you've got sample pieces from the original sample production and that if they don't match, you're not going to get the product you ordered. And believe me, guys, I've seen it many, many times. I'm not saying it's always been done deliberately. It's quite often by a mistake. Someone picked up the wrong material and delivered the wrong material, but you need to make sure that you've checked the product. So risk assessment would mean visibility to unauthorized subcontract. As I just said, if the factory haven't got the capacity to make that order, you need to know. And if they haven't got the capacity, ask them, why have you accepted the order? What are you going to do? Were you going to be late 2 weeks, or were you going to put these orders somewhere else, which leaves you at risk? Ensure approved samples match production, quite obvious, and prevent shipping delays and lost sales by resolving issues prior to production. It's so important to get this part right, okay? Then open communication, equal oversight for all vendors, and drive global consistency. You should, in all effect, be able to make the same shoe, not just in different factories, in different countries, and they still look the same. We go through a document review and on-site workflow, exactly the same as we did with TFA. So it is total transparency. So we look at this in terms of we open the meeting, we've got a document sample review, we have the shoes on the table, materials on the table, and we check it. Not just SGS or you guys doing it with the factory. You have to do it with the factory and the line managers and the supervisors, so everybody is clear and you're all moving and pushing in the same. Sample review, measurement and functional testing, document review, make sure everything is right. One thing wrong, you stop production. When you stop production, you delay shipment. When you delay shipment, it costs the brand and retailer money. It can cost the shoe manufacturer money because there are penalties they have to pay for late. So it's all about communication. If you're in the PRC, something is wrong, make sure there's a corrective action plan in place and get it put right and fix time. And of course, when we looked at the TFA, we're saying 3 months. This has to be a day or 2 days, or else you just completely stop. If you work with ourselves, if you work with SGS, we give you a spider's web graph like this, which explains where the issues are. We do this for PRC and the OPC. So you will see, if you look at the left-hand side, there's field inspections and functional tests. There's obviously been a problem there. Okay, so that problem, you can see straight away that problem needs to be fixed. The same as the production detail view. Also, there's a gap in the process there. So they're the parts to look at first. You bring in the management, the production line supervisor, and you say, here is a problem. We need to fix this problem. And quite often those problems can be fixed within an hour, okay? So, but it highlighted the problem so that when you get to production, you are ready. Now, a few case studies, again, and I've used to say to it, but when I'm presenting this, I can't use branded products. So, you know, we fixed this up so that we can show you specifically how a case study works and how we write the action. So this is a particularly difficult type of product because the material is a cotton and it's been crocheted, okay? And you can see the two pieces are a different shape, okay? If you have a different shape, you're more likely to have a fit problem or an aesthetic problem. When you finish it won't look like a pair. So what is that problem? So the way we help them solve the problem is to be able to use a dimensional control. So you cut that, which is the shape of the piece, which is where it should be. And so you can manage the product and get it into the correct shape. If each one is the correct shape, then you're going to have a more standardized product. Of course, this can happen with any type of footwear. You just have to make sure everything is the same. So we've put here a suggestion of how they can correct a corrective action. And here it is on the same shoe. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side, the outsole has been attacked, but as you can see, there is a very waved top, which is very unsightly, aesthetically not pleasing. If that went onto the shelf in a retail store or a branded store, it's unlikely the product will sell because it looks like a faulty product before you even given it or sold it to the consumer. And the reason it's got away from sold is those crochet pieces have been lasted underneath and attached to the insole, but they're sitting very, very proud. So you don't rough these off like you would if it was a normal leather upper, because it's just the crocheting and it will fall to pieces. So there was the problem identified. So we now show the factory how to solve the problem, which is basically cuts up parts and pieces well onto the insole. Okay, so you do a little cutout in the insole and it'll avoid this problem. So we went through the problem, showed them how to repair the problem, and fix the problem, and then they didn't have the problem anymore. Okay, so it goes back to what I was saying originally, how the SGS, when we offer this kind of service, we're offering a corrective action plan. We're not just suggesting what they need to do, we show them what to do. And that helps to speed up the process. And of course, as I say, I'm shamelessly selling a service that SGS offer here because of the pandemic and none of us being able to travel out to the markets and inspect our products. And we offer this service, but I'm sharing with you how you can work this once you're back on the road again. Moving on. So OPC, this is the third pillar in the 5 pillars, but the 3 new ones. The OPC is the on-site production controls. Okay, so this is at the beginning of mass production. We know the factory has got technical ability, the capability, capacities. We know the product is ready, the materials are in place, correct, testing is correct, everything is ready to go into production. So now let's put it into production and let's follow the process. And I mentioned it at the beginning, which is 5M1E. Now, the next slide will explain what that is, but and I'm sure there are people already writing down what does that mean. Well, 5M is, the M's are man, machine, material, method, and measure. And the 5M1E system is really, it's an analysis of data for quality control. And it's a method to find the root cause analysis problems. Okay, and the 1E is 1 for environmental. Okay, so again, I will show it on a slide in a few moments, but it's man, machine, material, method, measure, and 1 environment. So the on-site production control is looking at on-spot inspection, production line stitching, production line fitting, stock fitting, which is your insoles and your outsole materials, product line assembly, metal contamination, and I will touch on that. It is such an important area that some retailers and brands and factories seem to miss out, but it's crucial to safety to not only the factory and the factory workers, but the consumer. And we'll go through that in a short while. And then, of course, mold prevention. You hear me mention that a lot, but because we're starting to get into the tropical seasons in the likes of Indonesia, Vietnam, southern China, Thailand, India, Bangladesh, you have to be very careful that you have the measurements and the processes in place to prevent mold infestation. So we look at all of those different stages. So usually, the factory would have started the production. There'll be 5 to 10% into finished product, and the rest is in the production line. So we would already, any bottlenecks that have been missed, and hopefully that any, will have been caught, and we start to put the problem right. So we evaluate different stages of the mass production factory according to the 5M1E aspect, as I mentioned: material, machine, man, method, and measurement, and the environment. We look at the site verification, production process, key process technology, worker on-site operation level. We check the workers. Are the workers skilled enough to actually be running this process? Is the guy in the adhesive room issuing the adhesive with the correct time on it and signed it off? All different things, different aspects of the production line that could go wrong. We look at the semi-finished product inspection. If you've got a product that's blasted up, no outsole on it, you can compare it to the commercialized sealed sample, make sure the product is right, that the toe cap length is right, that the facing length is right, back height is correct. You can do all of these very simple things very, very quickly. And if there's any problems, them off straight away. On-site testing, sometimes there are on-site testing. And the one particular one that I always suggest, and you've heard me say it again about sole bonding, is check your sole bonding. Now, to be fair, the cross-linking of the PU adhesive, whether water-based or solvent-based, is 24 hours. But you can get a good indication as to whether you have a good sole bond just by using your thumb and pulling at the toe and the seam, and see if it grins or starts to come away. You'll know if you've got a good bond. Or you could use a toe post at the end of the production line. And the supervisor should be checking this on a daily basis. And then why if there's a problem, and what's the corrective action plan that's being assigned. So field investigation for root cause analysis. Anything is happening, do it at this time to avoid any further delays. And then it's in-house verification, finished goods, checking the AQL, all the final random inspection, product processing, which takes the final two pillars of the quality assurance model. And of course, packaging and marking and checking also needs to be checked. But again, as I say, everything is reviewed. So everything is transparent. There's nothing missed in anything we do. Okay, and this should be the same as what you guys do. You check everything. Open the meeting, document review, site verification. Make sure on-site and the production controls are absolutely solid. Sample review, finished goods inspection, function check, packaging and marketing. This is a marking check. This is important. The labeling is not correct because labeling in a different country is different. So if the labeling is not correct, you may have perfect shoe. You made it with absolutely no issues at all, top quality, but you put the wrong label on the box, and all of a sudden you've got an import problem. So check, get, review everything. And again, if there's anything wrong, we would be supporting, as I know any of the retailers will be, with a corrective action plan, follow up and secure, make sure it's right. And again, in an OPC, we offer a report, which is visual. It's what we call a spider web report. And here you can see it again. And this is absolutely made up, nothing from any factory. But you can see two areas where there's a problem. Production line checkpoint stitching. So there was a problem in the stitching room, and it's quite a serious problem because it's at 50% of the standard it should be. So you have a problem. So immediately you see this, you bring in the line manager and the supervisor, fix the problem, okay? Not just fix the problem. This is the problem. This is how you fixed it. Let's go and do it together. And then you can see the other one, which is production line checkpoints and assembling part. Again, they're assembling the shoe, getting ready to make it start to last products, and they find there's a problem. It could be anything from a fitting problem, the wrong size insoles have been put on the line with the shoes, wrong size outsoles. There can be a whole number of different issues. Identify the problem, put the problem right, and keep production continuously moving. So what we say is find out the root cause of the product issues and set a preventative measures so that it doesn't happen again. And I mean, before I go on, you know, all this check-in inspections, it teaches the factory, it teaches the workers, the production line managers, how to continuously improve their own product. I am, for one, excited about our industry on always continuous improvement. So these training courses I offer here and what we're talking about is all here just to make sure our product starts to move smoothly through production, that the number of returns from the consumer are falling and falling and falling, and that we continuously put product out of the factory door, which is first-class quality. An OPC, we also do a traffic light system. So if you're on red and you've gone into production, you have to stop production because you have a major, major problem. If you have a major, major problem, that means something's gone wrong at the PRC because you've not identified a potential problem. Okay, so again, the CAPA has to be put right. But this can cost you time, and it can cost you money. There's then the amber, which is, okay, carry on production as long as you can in line make these corrective actions. And green is, wow, production's fantastic. You're going to make these shoes, have the order ready 3 days before the distribution date, which is perfect. And we all like to hear that. But another case study, and you'll notice it's the same shoe as before. Another case study was after in production, we'd done all the checks and everything else. It was great. We showed them how to measure the thong strap and everything else, the crochet strap. We showed them how to make sure you didn't get a wavy sole. But then it's going into production, and you can see where the arrow's pointing. There's an indent. And you think, wow, that's unsightly. And again, if that happened and you put that in your stores, the consumer's going to complain. Now, many people would look at that and think, you know what, the thong strap is gone underneath there, and it's going to be uncomfortable to wear. But that's not actually the case what's happened here. So it's a good example to show you. So when you place the last on the shoe, where you then want to press your outsole, the last has the hole for the thong to go to. So in that shoe that you saw, you can see with the pictures here on the left-hand side, you've got the pink, it's sort of a seatboard material that's just put underneath to stop that imprinting onto the, and giving you a lift in the, when you press down on the shoe for sole pressing, okay? So and you use a thin piece of material to stop this happening. That was the quick solution to this, okay? And you can see the final outcome of the picture, which is on the right-hand side. Same shoe, no longer got the imprint on the shoe. Okay, so that's just another solution to a problem they had, which has given an unsightly mark on the shoe and was going to potentially cause a lot of problems. This is just an example of a corrective action sheet that we've got. We run a daily review with the factories that have problems to make sure these problems have been fixed. Okay, this is a corrective action plan, which I've said is a problem. SGS will have written this corrective action plan, and we now work with the factories to eliminate this and say that they have actually stopped. I do believe you'll get a copy of it should you request it, so you can pick how we. Excuse me. Now, I did mention a few moments ago metal contamination of sharp tools. Now, many brands, many retailers already have policies in place for it. And it's important. It is extremely important. It is not just the health and safety of the workers in the factories. It is extremely important for them. But consider if you were to leave a broken needle in an upper material and it was not identified. The shoe was shipped to the retailer or the brand. A consumer bought it, put their foot in the shoe, and they get a stitching needle stabbed into their foot. Now, nobody ever wants to hear of that happening. So put policies in place. You know, there are many policies in place in terms of broken needle policies in factories, but you can see some of the pictures here. You know, there's broken needles, there's needle and thread left in places. You can see the picture, which is the right picture, which is the pillow. There's a pair of scissors inside the packaging. Now, you can say you can see it, but what if it wasn't? If those scissors have been hidden, the consumer puts their hand into their bag to take it, stabs themselves. You have a... This is a simple thing to put in place. It is important that you put it in place. And if you don't, and something happens, the cost could be excellent. So looking at other method contaminations and modern products, scissors. Now people say, well, how do scissors happen? I just utility knife at the bottom, you see with the yellow handle. That's used a carton cutter. They can be dropped into the box accidentally when you're packing shoes. But if somebody then in the stores is taking those shoes out of the big carton and grabs this knife accidentally, they can seriously damage their hand. So tie down your knives, scissors. Make sure they can't fall off a bench and into a box. Have a broken needle pod. You know, we show staples there, and I know many shoe factories now do not attach their insoles using nails or staples. You know, when I was a boy 40 years ago making shoes in a shoe factory not 10 minutes from where I live here in England, we used nails all the time to nail the insole to the last prior to last. You know, but if a nail was left in, the consumer stabs themselves, you have a lawsuit. I can't stress enough how important it is to have this kind of policy. And if your factory hasn't got this policy, they're likely to get a red warning in the TFA. So method contamination tools and the service models you need to follow, you know, broken needles, and these are things that we actually see. Broken needles, and you need a control procedure. That the spare needles are left on the machines, and the needle balance records not match the actual record. So when needles are distributed within the stitching room, there needs to be a log. If a needle is broken, it needs to be taken off the log and a new needle issued, so you know exactly where all the needles are. It seems a small thing, but that small thing can cause a big problem. There are metal detection machinery that's used in factories that help you to detect metals in products. And there are sharp tool procedures. You need to develop a sharp tool procedure. If you haven't got one and you need help develop one, pick the phone up and speak to SGS. We'll help you develop that. So, just so you know, if if you would like to use the SGS and what I've explained there, as I say, I'm shamelessly promoting this, but the reason I'm promoting it is we're in a COVID situation. We cannot travel to the markets. There's a lot of uncertainty about the quality of the product being put into and shipped. But for the past year, I have to say, not being able to visit the market. We're having product here, going into warehouses, going into the stores, and that, which means the factories have some good processes in place, and we're getting confident in the supply chain. If you are unsure, we can help you. If you are wondering how this works, and I've been working with several brands, European brands in Vietnam as an example, we go through a PRC, we find a problem, we get them onto a Teams meeting, so we have full video, and we go through the problem directly with the brand, right in live time, and we can fix the problem, okay? So they can fix the problem just by having our guys in factory. It works pretty well. But of course, if you're going to run into a position like this, you have to be experienced. So we at SGS, we insist on a minimum 5 years relevant industry experience, familiar with each manufacturing process, strong technological knowledge, strong communication, and of course, spoken. And then qualifications in the field, regular field check, job evaluation by a supervisor and direct manager. We check ourselves. I mean, I must admit, even I do this. We must all do this. Challenge yourself. Am I doing this job right? Is there something that I can do better? I was challenging myself only this morning when I presented it to others. Have I presented this in a good way that people will understand? So we do it with our people. We have them check themselves, and our management check our people and make sure we've got the right procedures and regular assessment of our own team. I don't want to spend too much time on this now because we're running out of time, but this is our integrity control. If you get a copy of this presentation, you'll see just what we do internally in terms of integrity control, which is continual integrity control. And even there's a corporate hotline you can call if you think you've got a problem with integrity of any of our people. Okay, so just to close out and to take a few questions, Footwear Operational Optimization Technical Terms. It's one analytical tool that clearly defines potential problems in a company's QMS, quality management service. Will help to manage the quality more efficiently and cost effectively and help to deliver brand trust and achieve consumer. That's what you all want. So that's the service that we offer. This is what I believe we should do. SGS is full. I'm very proud of my team. I'm global head of all footwear operations, as well as the deputy vice president of the soft lines division. I've made shoes for 40 years, and in some cases, I'm quite ashamed of our industry. The soft lines of footwear industry, we're environmentally and sustainability-wise, we're one of the worst in the world behind oil and gas. And I want us to improve that. I want us to improve quality. I want you to say to me in 10 years' time, we don't need you to inspect our products anymore. We never get a problem. Okay, that's where we should be, you know. But today we're not there. And the footwear is a very complicated because with different types of construction, different materials types, and of course, new material coming into the market now. So we have to be ever more vigilant. So look, I'm going to shut up now. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them. If I can't answer them now because we're practically out of time, send the questions in. Mary Lau, my colleague here, will take all the questions, send them to me, and I will answer them by email. But I thank you so much for your time. If you're in the US or South America right now, have a great day. It's late afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me here in the UK, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for your great presentation. Before moving to the Q&A session, I'd like to let you know that I will display a short poll at the end of the Q&A session to rate your overall satisfaction with today's webinar. Thanks in advance for your participation. So we'll now go over the questions submitted during the session. Again, feel free to type and submit them in the Q&A widget. Okay, Paul. Yeah, we did receive quite a few questions about if the webinar is recorded and whether the participants can access the recording again. And I can tell you that yes, the webinar is recorded and you can access the recording using the same audience link. And we did receive a comment that really appreciate your presentation today. So we are going to send them your presentation PPT after the webinar.
No problem at all. No problem at all. As I always say, at SGS and in the footwear division, we are transparent. We're here to help you, okay? And that's it. You need help. Yeah. You pick up the phone or send an email, and one way or another, somebody will help you.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. Let me check if I have missed any questions. Okay, I think we addressed all the questions, and thanks for all the comments from you. So before we wrap up, as mentioned before, can you please take a couple of seconds to rate your overall satisfaction with today's webinar? It will help us to continuously improve your satisfaction.
All I'll say is please be kind.
Yeah, yeah, please. And it will help us to continuously improve and offer you relevant and quality content. Please rate your satisfaction on your screen and then feel free to share your comments with us in the text box in the next slides. So I would like to thank all of you for attending. I hope you found this presentation insightful. If you want to stay up to date with all standard changes and latest developments, or if you are interested in our upcoming webinars, please follow SGS on our Connectivity and Products LinkedIn Showcase page, or sign up for our online publication like Consumer Compact and Safeguards. As I said in the beginning, soon you'll receive a recording of this webinar along with the Q&A report and the presentation PPT, including all key links to connect with us. Thanks again for joining us and enjoy the rest of the day. Goodbye.